Like for real.
Yeah.
Hey guys, it's Priscilla from Quantum Mitch Cafe. Thank you so much for joining. I see some awesome people in the chat. I'm gonna mess Sking Tattoo. Thank you. You were here early, so you get a gold star. And I see Mind Forked. Hello. I'm not sure how many people will join live, but thank you if you're listening live now or later on. Thank you for listening. And then, yeah, you know the drill with Quantum Witch Cafe. I'm going to get right to it. It's your safe place to talk about anything weird, paranormal, strange, scary, spooky, UFOs, not UFOs, UAPs if you're fancy. Really anything goes on this show. So tonight we have Nathaniel Gillis, who is known as, for a second, I scared myself. I thought I forgot an L in your name. All right, I didn't. Scares over.
Nathaniel. Nathaniel.
That'd be I'll just blame it on the ADHD if it is wrong. So he is known as a demonologist, but we're going to talk about that term tonight. What that actually means, what that means now. And, the main topic for tonight is going to be dream demons. Now, I know you guys are like weirded out by me lately because I had like a medium and then all of a sudden it's like vampire and then demons. So we're just going to get weird this year. So, but that being said, this is not weird. This is something that people are living right now and have been living for a very long time. So, thank you so much for coming on, Nathaniel. I'm going to have you introduce yourself and give a little brief rundown. Who are you? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? Because this might be the first time people have seen you.
That's wonderful. I want to say hello to you and thank you for having me on again, Priscilla. I think you're amazing and congrats on being on the Disclosure Ladies team and everything you're doing and pushing this topic forward. So my name is Nathaniel Gillis. I hail from Ohio. I'm a Buckeye. And I got started in this research when I encountered what I considered to be a ghost at an early age. My parents had moved into a new house, and actually touring it is when I encountered the entity. It was a full-bodied apparition of a little girl. And once we moved into the house, the entity mutated in its pathology. And I realized very quickly this was not a ghost at all. It was an entity masking itself as a ghost. And we'll get into that phenomenon later on tonight. But that was my very first encounter with this phenomenon. And since then, I've been doing my best to not just encounter these beings and document the data, but to look back as far as I can into history, look for behavioral patterns and any interconnectivities that exist between different fields of research. And so I grew up in the evangelical movement, and so I was trained in what they call spiritual warfare in that movement. Since then, I've left. I have, again, my research as of late has been centered around demonology, or what we would consider to be demons. And so that's who I am, what I do, and why I'm here.
Okay, so I want to kind of go over like the term demonologist and the term demon, and how does that apply to this this realm of entities that seems to come to people while they're dreaming?
Well, again, I think that, first of all, my hypothesis is not that aliens are demons or that demons are aliens. My hypothesis is that we're dealing with a proto-intelligence, a singular intelligence that's using both as masks in which to hide from us. So with respect to demonology and what demons are, there were two schools of thought in history. One was that a demon is essentially a mutated ghost. And the earliest records within ritual bowls of demonology, that's what they believed, was that there are some people who die, and when they die, they do not evolve, but they mutate into something more malevolent. So that's one hypothesis. But in the 16th century, the Catholic Church solidified another theory, and that was that demons are in fact fallen angels, and that these are demigods essentially. So one of the reasons why I kind of emancipated myself from that ideology is because whatever we're dealing with, even demons or demonology, they're playing by different rules. I was researching the other day. The average time for an exorcism is a year and a half. So something is vastly wrong with our model of demonology and our understanding of what demons are. But as far as I can tell, in early history, even prehistory, what we have are our ancestors applying agency to certain events. Not only that, but in order to place a face on the phenomenon, they consider these beings to be demons, something that has malevolent intentions, something that fears God and has a faith in certain religions. But in my research, I realized that our ancestors did their best, not just to understand what they were experiencing, but to document it. But in their documentation, they limited us. These are horns and hooves. And with that, the dogmatists begin with their theorizing. They all fall underneath the umbrella of the Catholic Church. They all speak Latin, and they're all liars. Now, one of the reasons why I emancipated myself from that understanding is because when you look at the data sample, you look at the demonological literature, you realize that these beings are not anything remotely close to that understanding. They have their own sexual pathologies. They have their own victimologies. They have their own language preferences. They have their own belief systems. And once we get into the case studies, we see very clearly that, again, that religion is potentially just another mask that this proto-intelligence has hid behind throughout millennia. It does not want us to understand. Stop me if I start rambling. They do not want us to understand who, what, and where, and when they are. Therefore, they hide behind these masks. And so yesterday's demons, they're today's aliens. But you have to understand my position. I'm not saying that they're demons or aliens. I believe, again, that these are merely masks that the phenomenon is wearing to manipulate us.
And I agree with that because I've had countless conversations with pastors and normal people and not normal people and Christians and non-Christians, agnostic, everybody. And they will always say, like, you know, like there's people convinced that either that they won't take that for an answer is what I'm saying. I'm trying to say, like, they're saying it's either a demon or it's of God, big G, or it's a demon. And I'm like, well, big G has been ignoring the hell out of people if these are demons. And these particular type are not afraid of any God.
Right.
So it's kind of scary to
situation.
people to think that, like, you know, they're like, oh, just, you know, call on this saint or call on this, you know, thing, and it's supposed to stop it. And sometimes they don't. So what is happening to people while they're sleeping? Where does this start? Like what, like let's go down this rabbit hole from the beginning. So
good.
No, I was gonna say.
Okay.
You go.
Oh, well, so again, our ancestors, somewhere in time, our ancestors encountered a phenomenon that would induce them into dream states. And some of the earliest texts we have are Mesopotamian texts that we found in ritual bowls and archaeology. And essentially what would happen, and this gets, again, the phenomenon is interconnected. It's not a dichotomy, aliens, it's a duality. And we're gonna witness this in real time this evening. But the earliest text suggests that women who were impregnated or pregnant, they would go to bed at nighttime, and even before they would close their eyes, an entity would manifest to them, and it would induce them into a dreamlike state. That's a behavioral pattern that we're going to highlight as we move on into this research. So it induced them into a dream state, but it would do that by virtue of staring into their eyes. Now, this is a common motif within the UFO abduction phenomenon. It's another interconnectivity that we cannot ignore, no matter how much some of us want to. But essentially, the beings would descend down on top of the woman. It would stare into her eyes. And then this woman would be induced into a dreamlike state, not knowing if what she's experiencing is actually real. Now, when I started researching this, one of my older heroes was Dr. David Jacobs, and I love and respect him, but he mentions how that these beings were hacking the optic nerve. Well, this is not a modern phenomenon, right? It's been happening since written history. But in antiquity, they were not just hacking the optic nerve, but they were hacking what's called the frontal orbital media cortex. It's directly behind the eyes. That is the portion of our brain that tells us whether or not what we're seeing and experiencing is in fact real. So that is another reason why they induce us into a dream state, is because they do not want us to understand what's actually occurring to them. Moving even further, there are various case studies, not just in UFO abduction literature, but in incubi literature, where women and men would go to bed at night and they're just, they're getting ready, they got their bathrobe on, whatever, they got out of the shower, and all of a sudden they just get really sleepy. Next thing they know, they're in this nightmarish scenario where an entity would attack them and perform rituals on them. And then sometimes they'll even wake up the next day, go to work, and think, okay, thank God, that was just a dream. And I realize we're going to get, it's going to be very dark, and it's not my intention, but we've got to get to the data, right? We have to talk about this. But these victims would go to work the next day and think, oh my God, that was the worst spiritual attack I've ever experienced in my life. Thank God I woke up, but thank God it was just a dream. And then they looked at their wrists, and there are bruises on their bodies and ligature marks on their hands and feet that directly correlated with what they experienced in the nightmare. So the purpose of the dream demon itself is not just to induce into dream states. It's to get us into this virtual reality scenario that Dr. Carla Turner mentions often in her books, where we are not sure what is real or not. And then they do what they want to do with us. So it's a very a dark scenario for us, but there are case studies we're going to get into later on, but that is just one scenario and one theory as to why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah. I kind of want to note too to people, like, we always think of like dream demons being like the sleep paralysis demon or the night terror demon. Sometimes this is not scary. Sometimes this feels good to people.
Yeah.
Because
Oh my God.
imagine you think it's somebody, it's like this, you think you're dreaming and this dream guy, or maybe like your husband or wife is showing up to you and seducing you. So you're
Correct.
like not going to fight it. It's not
Right.
always scary, which to me is even scarier because you just might be like, sweet, I'm having like a really spicy dream. Um, and then
Yeah.
next you know it.
I've had cases of that. Not in, well, I'll tell you my experience with that particular phenomenon. But I've had individuals that have reached out to me where like the marriage is falling apart because one of these beings is, and I use this, don't crucify me, but in a way it
Got my
was,
nails.
yeah, right. It was grooming the victim. And that is a measure that we see over and over and over again, not just in incubi cases, which we'll get to, but in the UFO abduction phenomenon, where the experiencer themselves are being primed by the entity. One of the ways that these beings will kind of navigate around our instinctual awarenesses, I should say, is by playing the role of someone else. And you highlighted this, Priscilla, and thank you for doing so, because I've had cases where women will, like, what in particular, I was on a show not too long ago, and a woman who is a supporter of my work reached out to me during the show and said, I got to tell you my story. I'm like, okay, what happened? She said, I am in bed at nighttime. She said, and my husband walks up to the side of my bed, and she's like, he seduces me, we make love. And she said, the entire time, she said, there was this fog that rested upon me. And she said, it was just the strangest thing. And it was afterwards, she said that the being got off the bed, stood next to her, and just started staring at her. And she said, suddenly the fog began to lift. And that's when she realized that there were certain facial features that this entity had that did not belong to her husband of 30 years. That's when she thought, oh my God, what are you? And that's the entity shape-shifted, turned into a black smoky apparition and floated out of the room into the hallway. But what my colleagues and I are more interested in is this role-playing aspect of the phenomenon. I had another case study that is in India, where an individual, she had this health and wellness retreat going on, but she emailed me. We got on the phone one night, and she said that the entity that she was dealing with had manifested to her in the image of 7 lovers. And in a way, it was working her like a safe. Which one will you believe I am? And this gets into something very dark as well. The first images that it manifested as were specifically the men that did not wear protection during intercourse. Now, this whole role-playing aspect, again, is you didn't make him wear protection. you're not going to make me either because I am him. Right? It's literally stepping into a role. Now, there's a reason that these dream demons are doing what they're doing, is specifically in this case study, because not wearing protection increases the probability of insemination. So this is where the dream demon literally, and this is how close we are with the interconnectivities, the dream demon now becomes an incubus to her. Right?
That's insane.
Right. So it's increasing its probability of consummation and insemination. So when we're looking at these role players, these actors, it's prevalent in phenomenon. It's not just a UFO abduction. It's also in incubi case studies, and obviously, as we're talking tonight, dream demonology.
Okay, so where does this take us next? So people, those are just a few examples of these what happens.
Mhm.
And so what have you discovered recently that is kind of adding to this? You know,
Mhm.
what is reinforcing this besides, you know, obviously you found stuff like this all the way back to Mesopotamia. That's kind of a
Correct.
big deal, meaning it's been happening so long.
Huge.
But
Yeah.
what is reinforcing the concept that these things are doing this in your eyes or in
Well,
your
the
research?
hybrid, well, the hybridization program is another thing on their agenda. And what we've done in this field is we've compartmentalized the phenomenon. And I know we've discussed this at length many times. And I've seen this in not just in paracons, but in ufology, where if we do not include incubi case studies, we can ignore them and suggest that this is a new phenomenon. Now, if it's a new phenomenon, by virtue of it being it has new origin, which means we can ignore all of the other case studies that suggest, hey, their sexual pathology is unique. And so what I realized was that the dream demon itself was not really a who. They were not entities in and of themselves. It was just our feeble attempt to place a face on the phenomenon, just like it is the alien, the demon, the angel, the ghost. Truthfully, what I realized was that the literature said essentially that these were not a who, but a how. This entire dreamscape scenario was the modus operandi of this proto-intelligence in order, this is incredible, but it's designed to induce us into a dream state in order for us to comply with him, where we really don't know what's real and what's fake. We wake up from a dream thinking, okay, it's just a bad nightmare. Truthfully, there were things done to that individual. And in many cases, even with Betty Luca, Dr. Clark Turner, their body itself will tell the story of the trauma that they forgot in the dream. Does it make sense?
It does. And I see, you know, a lot of people saying like, that's just not possible. Like what are like the dream is an illusion. How can it possibly hurt you?
Let me give you my case. Oh
I'm
yeah,
so I'm
let me.
only laughing because like I know so many people that have like come out of these types of dreams
Mhm.
with injuries. So
Right.
that's how, but how that's the $1,000,000 question, right? How?
Well, I think that we need to understand something that the dream that they're inducing us into is not, it's not like the dream that we go to bed and have. It's completely different. It literally, it's almost like hypnosis, most likely,
Okay,
most
that
definitely like
makes sense. Yeah.
hypnosis. So I think that we need to make a distinction between the two. Um, but what we're looking at again is their ability and their desire to deceive. That's where the research is now. In right now, the research is like that I'm connected to. We're asking the question: okay, are they deceiving us for our own good? Right? Are they doing this for our own good? Are they inseminating women with semen for their own good? At what point do we realize that our rights as a species, are just being eroded? And they do this by virtue, again, of creating these virtual reality scenarios where we don't know what's real. We don't know what's fake until we wake up and get out of it. And then we start realizing, oh my God, they bit me, or there are scoop marks on my body, or they took samples out of my body. So that's what essentially it's all about. But I don't want to ramble, but you can take me any direction you want to, and I'll just talk. So
No, I just wanted to clarify because I see people saying, you know, like they don't come through dreams, and that's why I kind of brought it up. And
mhm.
then something else saying like it's not physical, but like it's that's why I kind of asked that question, because
Mhm.
it's not like a literal dream, like not like REM sleep
Right.
type stuff, right? I mean, things do happen to people, but this is more of like a like almost like a hallucination that it's inducing on you. Like you're still like awake and it's still there physically, but it's altering your perception to see
Yeah.
it, right? Is that what
Yes.
you're
Yes. So years ago, before I even got in this field, uh, I got off work and I went to my apartment. I got in bed and I went into a dream, and it was a very strange dream. It wasn't like other dreams. It was very dark, and I just felt this heavy, malevolent presence. In the dream itself, there was a featureless shadow figure that looked like my fiance at the time. Like if you put her in a room and turn the lights off, you would see it featureless, but you could see the shape of her hair and everything. That's what this looked like. And so it had mounted me in the dream. And in the dream, I'm trying to fight this thing off of me. And I'm flailing my arms or doing all this number. And then I wake myself up, and upon my astonishment, I'm looking directly at the entity that was in my dream. It was physically on top of me. That's when my fiance woke up, looked at it, and said, "Oh my God, babe, what is that?" And then the entity put one leg over and disappeared in the shadows. So whatever we're dealing with, again, there are notes of similarity with UFO abduction phenomenon because they also induce us with these dream states, and we'll get into some case studies today. But I think that as dark as this research is, somebody has to do it. Number one, because these victims have to be heard. We have to dig deeper into this phenomenon.
okay, that totally makes sense, and I hope that clarifies some of the physical aspects of it. All right,
Mhm.
so you're leading us down the rabbit hole tonight. What's the next stage of this, or what is the next point that should
Well,
be discussed when we're kind of like talking about this?
yeah. So there is this Eastern Mediterranean concept of the soul that it kind of interconnects with the dream demon hypothesis. Um, the earliest text we have again was not just that they would attack us at nighttime or that they would stare into the eyes of their victims, but that inducing us into this virtual reality thing, this hypnosis, if you will, that there was a measure of our soul that would come out of our body and that they would affect that portion of us. Now, people say that doesn't make sense. I don't believe it. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. The case studies say that. Dr. Collick Turner's work suggests that, where that whatever they're inducing us into, it's not just to like I said, navigate around our awarenesses and to get us to comply with them. But their theory in antiquity was that there's a portion of us that leaves the body during this state of existence, and it was that portion of us that they're after, that they're touching, and they're operating on. Now, we see hints of this research in the UFO abduction phenomenon when we see out of body experiences where it's not just okay they induce people into dream states, but it's with the intention of plucking the soul or consciousness out of the body. Now, this is very dark. Uh, Let me say this, and I'm going to get into some other case studies. I was working with a remote viewer's son, who this particular remote viewer had died, but his son contacted me and said, "Look, my dad encountered these dream demons, and we've got to discuss this." So we get on the phone, and he says, he goes, "My father was a famous remote viewer, and he said he would go into this like hypnosis vein of existence, and he said then he would leave his body and he would meet his guides, and he said that his guides would give him like prophecies, words of knowledge, whatever, insights." And he said, but he would go then and call celebrities and local politicians and give them this information. Hey, listen, your polling's going to drop, or there's a votership you need to focus more on than another. Anyways, he said that there was one night when he was put back into his body and he woke up. And he said that his dad ran down the stairs. He was inconsolable and he had a massive heart attack. He said when they got him to the hospital, they were ripping his shirt off to put the robe on and everything. And he saw all of a sudden from underneath his skin, there were subdermal religious amulets there were scarifications, but religious amulets that began to move themselves from underneath the skin to the surface. One of them was the cross, obviously the cross of Calvary. The other one was the Star of David. And the last one is perhaps the most troubling, was an Egyptian hieroglyphic that was arching above both of them. Now, again, dealing with these dreamscapes and being out of body during them. That's not a new phenomenon. Even in Betty Luca's case study, she talks about how when they took her out of her body, that when she was placed back into her body, upon that moment, her skin began to demonstrate skin anomalies, punch marks. And so what I'm trying to get everybody to understand again is that there are implications here, that it's not just dream demons. Again, that's a mask. But during these encounters, they are pulling out consciousness, whatever you want to call it, manipulating it, and then placing it back into the body. And I know I'm probably going to get killed in the comments, but I'll perhaps post a picture.
No, I'm starring your guys' questions and comments. They're related, and we'll have like a little. Well, if it ends up like fitting in, I'll add it in. If not, I'll get to them. But I am starring. I'm not ignoring you guys. So I guess the question obviously people would have is why? Like why what are they doing to somebody's consciousness or their astral body or soul, whatever people are calling it, right? At this point.
Mm-hmm.
What are they doing to it? And then why are they doing it
Correct.
to us?
So there are different hypotheses out there. There's the soul hunter theory that Nigel Kerner came up with, where these are basically biological robots that are coming in to steal souls, to basically kill people and harvest the soul itself. Now, it's a little bit weird. I mean, obviously, what we're talking about is already weird, but I don't want that scenario to occur. I hope that's not true, but that's just another option that's on the table. But as far as my research goes, the case study suggests that they're treating the soul like we would treat the body, like there is a constitution to consciousness, right? Even more than that, there are experiencers who, when they're induced in these dream states, their consciousness is taken, and they're being trained how to fly crafts. Like literally, the chairs they're being placed in out of body are tailored to the contour of their consciousness or their soul. Now, what's really interesting to me, as dark as it is, because the implications are terrifying, is that many of these experiencers never actually fly the craft in their lifetime. Right? Like in other words, they train the consciousness to do this, but when they're living their life back in their body, they never fly the craft, which means that in many cases, these beings are not training people for muscle memory. It's almost as if they're preparing them for the afterlife or to fly the craft consciously. So whatever they're doing to the soul, I mean, we have different case studies where they're taking things out of it, they're putting things into it, they're putting the consciousness in boxes. We have case studies with Dr. Collier Turner where they took the consciousness out of a woman, and when she refused to comply with them, they threatened her. You see that? And she turned around, and it was a copy of her body. And they said that if you do not comply with us, we will kill you and send that body back, and no one will know that it's not really you.
That's pretty scary.
Well, yeah, because it implies that not every abductee actually made it back.
Yeah, for sure. Some people, yeah, you wouldn't know, and your family wouldn't know. I mean, there might be like, it could manifest as something, like a new hobby or a new interest or a new personality trait. You know what I mean? That they're just like, oh, well, that's new, but I'm with it. You know what I mean? Or
Absolutely, and I think that we as researchers need to entertain the idea that is also hybridization. It's not just, okay, they're merging DNA, but it's literally they're placing consciousness in people. Now, that was another interconnectivity between demonology and ufology, right? Because in demonology, we call that perfect possession. So it's just funny how it overlaps. That was one of the real indicators for me that I was like, oh my God.
right.
Took the glasses off and I thought, wait a minute, what if we're dealing with the proto-intelligence? We've just compartmentalized it and called it different things, different titles.
Right. And the word demon is fairly new, right? When it comes to like all of this.
Yeah.
There was like,
Daemon.
yeah. So, cause like, people think that word is like, they use it to describe so many different things. I feel like when these all don't fit, like even like, they don't fit the description and they don't, like you say, like play by the same rules.
Do they, yeah, so they're playing by different rules because they're playing a different game. But what we have here again are entire religions who, in order to solidify their power over people, they claim to have authority over these beings.
Mm,
Well, we're right because we can take care of them. And so you have these different traditions, even
right.
Catholicism, right? They all, they're all demons, and they're all exercised, and they all obey the name of Jesus. And all that. And I think it's an interesting hypothesis until you get to the data. It's not true. It's not true. Even Father Sinistrario of Amino was a Franciscan priest, and he encountered what he called a pagan demon. Imagine that, right? When religiosity defines what a demon is, but
Right.
it doesn't even obey religion. So is it a demon, right? Or were we being victims of our own intellect, right? I got to place a name on this. And so that's really where we are. But I think again, if we rip the mask off the phenomenon, we realize that this has been mutating throughout history, and in many ways, it's evolved according to our awareness of it.
It's just so strange. Like it's been here all along, but it's constantly changing, and but
Correct.
it's still like doing things to people that either like in a lot of cases they don't want, and then
Hmm.
sometimes it tricks them into thinking they do want it.
Right.
So what is going on? Like I don't even understand this. I don't think anybody can like maybe understand it fully.
Hmm.
But as somebody that has experienced this, because people will say, well, I'm just gonna say it because we're talking openly here. Like, um, Priscilla, you brought this shit on yourself because, you're
Yep.
a witch. So you're messing around with all that stuff you shouldn't. And now
Hmm.
now you got a demon in your dream. But
Yeah.
like, but you had to understand like this happens to like people that are like 100% devoted to God, right?
Hmm.
Like the Catholic Christian God.
Absolutely.
Like so this happens to a lot of different people. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that that definitely needs to be realized because people are quick to kind of it's almost like victim shaming at this point when it happens to people. Like, "Oh, well, you know, you read a book about the occult," which is such a silly
Right.
word to just say like you read about the occult, but because that's like everything. But yeah, I feel like people often do that to experiencers like, "Well, you opened yourself to this." So, um
That is annoying. I get that a lot too. I think it's ludicrous because it's a lot like, okay, when I was at a restaurant one time, the guy saw that I was reading witch era literature, and he's like, the Bible says you shouldn't read that. I'm like, where does it say that? I don't know. And he kept telling me it's real talk. It's real talk. I was like, it's not real talk. You think it is, but you don't know what you're talking about. And the real issue we have, especially like because like I said, I grew up in evangelicalism. People think that because it makes them feel safe. I'm not doing that, therefore I'm good to
Oh,
go.
yeah,
And it's
I'm not a
not
witch.
true.
I'm not gonna get a dream demon. Yeah.
Right. It's like, okay, whatever. They've been doing this since recorded history. They do it to pagans, they do it to atheists, they do it to agnostics, they do it to
Right.
Pentecostals. I
To each
mean, my
other
God, Betty.
sometimes too, like, like
Right, absolutely. But Betty Luca, like I grew up Pentecostalism. Betty Luca received the Holy Ghost in her house. And that's a term most people won't know, maybe some will. But you have grown up in religion. She had the Holy Ghost, these beings did that to her. So there's something again. It's a miss, and in what religion, if anything, what religion's done is it lied to us in the sense that all of these beings are afraid of a certain deity, and that it's difficult for me to say that because my dad's a pastor. Like it's very uncomfortable to admit that. But even the beings that we're witnessing within occult literature that are being conjured, they don't follow these rules either. So we have to ask ourselves if the rules that we thought they are following, if they aren't just propaganda by the proto intelligence to get us to be okay, we're good, no big deal. They'll follow this rule. It's not true. That's why when you get into Crowley literature and Jack Parsons, Kenneth Grant, and the occult, okay, we'll draw a circle until the bee, it'll stay within the circle until it leaves the circle and beats the crap out of you. It's at that point we have to realize that we were taught to believe things, possibly by the phenomenon itself, that are not intrinsically true.
yes, and it's everywhere too, like, think of every scary movie, it's just like, "Oh, you
Right.
just get some holy water," or, it's just so simple, but that's not
Oh
often
my
the
God.
case.
I did
So,
I'm sorry, go.
I was gonna say, so what is that where does that take us next in the co sorry, I'm playing with things, where does that take us next in the conversation? You know, so these things come in to people, induce a sort of hallucination or vision.
Mhm.
They do things to their body, and then even they're conscious. So how does that translate across? And this is one of the questions that I think would fit in right
Mhm.
now. Um, how does it, cross the border, so to speak, of their
Yeah.
realm to ours, or the vision to physicality? Like, are there any research points addressing that you've come across?
Yeah. So I got to understand across the border. I assume it's from the astral plane into the physical.
I think
Well, I
so.
think that, okay, when we're dealing with incubi cases, I need to highlight this because it's meaningful. It's germane to the conversation. Number one, I came to the conclusion that what demonologists called incubi and dream demons, they were not a who. These were not entities. These were programs employed by the phenomenon itself. It's just like a ritual, right? The ritual is not the demon. The demon's performing the ritual. So it's something that this phenomenon is doing to people. So when we're dealing with dream states, in many incubi cases, if not most, the woman is induced into this hypnosis, this hypnotic the session to where she's not understanding fully what's going on. And it's my husband. Well, I believe it's my husband. I might as well consent. And next thing you know, that entity has inseminated her. And that's what was occurring in the 16th century. Okay, these dream demons, incubi, were considered to be the Dybbuk or the Dibuk phenomenon. And women were going to bed at nighttime. Next thing you know, they're induced into a dream state. Oh my God, it's my ex-boyfriend, or it's my husband who returned from work or something. And next thing you know, she's pregnant. Now, this again, we're touching on the hybridization program without even trying to. And so, like in the debug phenomenon, these women would go to bed, like I said, they would wake up the next day and, they had bruises, scarifications, ligature marks. They didn't understand what was going on. And next thing you know, they're pregnant with something. And this is something that's worth highlighting as well. They were not just pregnant with a fetus, but they were also impregnated with consciousness.
That's
That's
almost
another.
scarier. I mean, that's almost scary. Like, if you get, I hate to say it, it's going to be
Mhm.
controversial, but if you get pregnant, you don't want to be pregnant. Like, I mean, I guess
Yeah,
not everywhere now, but like, there's, something can be done with like a physical being, right? Like, I would never, but just
yeah,
saying like it's real. Like, if you're pregnant, if you think something happened, there's plan B, there's all this stuff, right?
right.
So, but like, if you're impregnated by like a consciousness, this is the equivalent of a possession, right?
There we
So,
go. Absolutely. And I know there
that's
are people going to be like, there are people that are going to be like, okay, I watch this and I just think it's all BS. That's fine. Don't believe me. Go read these books, Between Two Worlds, Spirit Possession, Eros and Evil. They'll tell the stories here. The data doesn't lie. We have case studies here that are present. But getting into one of their behavioral patterns that kind of changed my paradigm was that possession to us is pregnancy to them. It is it is the hybridization program. Uh, if I may, in the 16th century, these women were not just impregnated by the dream demon, but there was consciousness in them. The consciousness that was
quick.
in
So
them,
both,
both of
I'm
them at the
sorry,
same
to
time.
clarify, so like, I have a baby, I have a demon baby, and I have an extra consciousness with it.
Yes,
Okay.
100%. Now, in the demonological literature, these women, again, victims of incubi, victims of dream demons, would be dealing with different memories. Okay, like one individual, one lady that encountered these things said that she remembers being in France, Paris, France, and eating baguettes or beignets, whatever you want to call them, and yet she'd never been there.
What a fancy dream demon. Baby,
Right,
I'll take you to
absolutely.
Paris.
Right, right. We see this in UFO abduction literature where the individuals, like some people, they don't know, like, okay, why am I remembering this? These aren't even my memories. It's very interesting. But in the 16th century, they were not just possessed by consciousness, but they were impregnated by the demon itself or by the entity. Is this making sense?
It does make sense, and I think I kinda wanna guess where you're going with it, but you go, because
Okay.
I might be wrong.
So essentially, it is the hybridization program, but we missed it because again we've compartmentalized the phenomenon to such a degree that these case studies are not only ignored, they're forgotten. That's not this, because this is completely different. It's not true. So these individuals, again, they were impregnated by the entity, but to the point where they were actually showing. And the exorcists were performing what's called the lavouche technique, where the woman would feel a pulsating presence in the womb, and they would push their thumbs on the wrists, and they would feel two pulses in the same body and two heartbeats in the same body. And that led them to ask the most profound question I've ever heard regarding this research, and that was she pregnant by the entity, or was she pregnant with it?
That kind of goes back to what you had said, is these are that I don't want to mess it up, that these could be like ghosts, right?
Yes,
Mutating into something.
I call them molters. And
Okay.
if you really want to get down to this whole scenario, it is a self-replication of species. I create a hybrid child. I place my consciousness in it. I have a new body. We've seen this over and over again in incubi literature, demonological theory, in the UFO abduction phenomenon, even in esoteric rituals. It's called the red rite. When a mage would go out and he was dying, what he would do is he would go and inseminate a woman with a fetus. And this is in the text. One of them is Fritz Kramer, The Red Fez. The other one's The Golden Bow by James Frazier. He would dislocate his consciousness and place it in that baby. Now he has a new body to possess. But getting back into the debug phenomenon, they were pressing their thumbs on these women, feeling two heartbeats in the same body and two pulses in the same body. Now watch this. When the consciousness of that entity left, they took the baby out of the womb. Hello, missing fetus syndrome.
That was my next question. The missing fetus syndrome. So
it's one and the same. That's the real hybrid, my friend.
Okay. So are there still other entities doing this that are not this? Are there still demons doing crazy things, and aliens and interdimensionals and angels even? Because Jen brought up a good point. In the Bible and a lot of the Apocrypha, we see stuff like this happening. And one of the talking is, she said it reminds her of when fallen angels
Let's go
had
there.
sex with women.
Beautiful.
So are the Nephilim, and Jen's one of the phenomenology teams. So hi, Jen.
Awesome.
So
Great.
she's very smart. So the Nephilim are this. Would they be considered one of these entities that's like, I knocked you up with me?
With me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I was like, there's nothing
absolutely else. Well, again, what we're looking at in mythology, even in Egyptology, which I'm going to get onto what are called the Repiumai and Ugaritic literature and the Rephaim, the Nephilim hypothesis. But in Egyptology, they talk about the image of the invisible. And so when I started getting it, so the point is that the theory is that there are some entities that when they mutate, they have what's called the disability of being without being a being. They're everywhere and nowhere. And so the goal was to create a new body to inhabit. Now, everything's on the table, obviously, but we're going to go down this rabbit hole. So in the Mediterranean literature, again, we have ritual bowls where people were praying to and calling on the name of Repiuma. It's a plural term for deceased ancestors or people that have died and they're out there. And so the Repiumai were considered to be disembodied, but they were also people who were like the pillars of their community, the first exorcists, the first physicians, the governors, the kings, the warriors, all of that. And so the Repiumai became the Rephaim in Hebrew mythology. The Rephaim, again, had a dual meaning. And we're going to get into some very, very dark stuff, but you're going to see it, hopefully. When we're looking at the hybridization program, we're not simply looking at just DNA merging. We're looking at the biological avatar as well as the consciousness that's within it. Essentially, we're looking at the hardware and we're looking at the software. And so when these Rephaim, these Rephaimai disembodied souls begin to evolve in Eastern Mediterranean literature, we see them now in Genesis 6 as Rephaim. Sons of God saw the daughters of men, went into them, made unto them wives, and they created a new hybrid entity. Now, the problem here, again, when we get into their sexual pathologies, they were Rephaim. And the word Rephaim in Hebrew has a dual meaning. Remember what I told you? Disembodied, that's software. But what's the hardware? That was the giant. Is this making sense? I don't want
Yeah, no,
to.
it's making sense. I just like it just like kind of all hit me at once, and I actually kind of got like
Yeah,
a little lightheaded.
it's a lot.
Yeah, no, it's just I'm empathic, so like when things like hit, like I have like a physical reaction to it. So
Correct.
yeah,
I
that
feel you
that
on that.
makes total sense. But carry
They
on.
were they were called men of renown for a reason. In this legend, again, it did not originate in Hebrew consciousness. It was a tradition throughout the Levant at that time in history. These were the men of renown. See, this is why even in the evangelical movement, we have people, oh my God, they're giants, 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 not realizing the consciousness that was in them, right? It's a dual meaning. Rephaim, ghost, is one definition. The other meaning was giant. What we're looking at in real time is the hybridization program. The consciousness of the deceased was in the giant itself. Okay, moving further along. This is why in the deboot phenomenon, they considered this pregnancy to be the impregnation of the dead within the bodies of the living. This is also why, when they got rid of the consciousness, the phenomenon took the fetus out of the womb. It's a game changer, essentially.
Yeah, so why do some spirits do this? Like why so like is this like kind of I mean like why don't they go towards the light, so to speak? If
Mhm.
that makes any sense. Why are they hanging around trying to come back? Is this like their nature, some sort of weird attachment to vices or their own bodies in some case, or an attachment to like human pleasure or the things of this world? Like what would
Right.
make, what sort of spirit does this? Because like some people die and you never experience them again, and they're just like
Mhm.
in maybe like healed space, heaven, back into the universe, whatever you want to believe. And then some
Mhm.
stick around. They're like, nope, I need to get back in a body. Like what?
Yes. So it's not reincarnation, it's transmigration. And in Jewish literature, that's a point that they highlight often, where it's a great question, but let's go down this rabbit hole. There's a theory in Eastern Mediterranean literature where there were some people that were too evil to get into heaven and too evil to go to hell. And so what they did is they created this wheel within a wheel where they would keep being born, they would keep inhabiting bodies, and they would never transition to wherever they're supposed to go. Which is quite disturbing. Like even in the Golan Heights right now, we have what's called the Gilgal Rephaim, and it's a circle. And Gilgal Rephaim, created by these beings, these molters, that's what I call them. Gilgal Rephaim means the wheel of souls, keep being reborn or possessing new bodies. But essentially, again, this is a self-replication of species. We've seen this, like when Betty Luca was abducted, she saw these grays, and she asked, "Okay, what are these beings? Where are you getting these things from?" And they told her, "These are the fetuses that we've taken." Now, whose consciousness was in them? So this is why I do lectures. Okay, I did a lecture on the pathology of possession and the role it plays throughout history. See, these beings first, and I'll shut up, but these beings first possessed statues. Then they started creating bodies to inhabit
Okay.
through possession, and then now they're in the hybridization program, where now I have a new body to possess.
I'm trying to think of a follow-up question. Because we've
And I
talked about
apologize.
this before. No, don't
Yeah.
apologize at all. I'm just trying to like take it in. It's a lot because we've talked about this a little bit, like,
Mhm.
but this is just adding, it's putting it all together. And so
Mhm.
these spirits go in, they're So do you think that's what they are? What you said,
Moltres.
they're not, yeah, that is insane. And a lot of people are having this experience. I wouldn't say a lot of people, but I think more
Mhm.
are having it than maybe realize it even. Um, so what happens after they give what so they don't get missing fetal syndrome and they give birth to this
Okay,
being
what
or
we have here, that's very rarely happened in witch era literature. Here's something interesting too. In witch era literature, when these people were copulating with these beings, uh, the phenomenon, again, guys, we cannot compartmentalize it anymore. We cannot afford to. These individuals were taken on what were called demonic flights. And they were taken by these entities that had veiled themselves as horns and hooves, demons, and corpses. And they would be taken to the Sabbat at an undisclosed location, and they would have intercourse with what they thought was a demon or a corpse. And in many cases, this is in Eros and Evil by Ariel Masters, the phenomenon would create this theatrical production tailored to the belief system of this experiencer. Okay, this is dark stuff. And so the female, the women, they're thinking, oh my God, this is all great. The husband's at the house. I'm hanging out with old Diablo, and we're just, getting it on. And next thing you know, there was a frequency there that fuzzed out. Imagine your phone going from 5 bars to just completely disconnected. And for a fleeting moment, we got to pay attention. This is incredible. For a fleeting moment, they realized what was occurring to them. The technology being employed stopped. And they were not making out and having intercourse with demons or ghosts or corpses. They were being poked and prodded by metallic objects. Hello, UFO abduction.
yeah.
But the phenomenon, again, wore a mask. So that's my point. But in demonological literature, whenever they would conceive a child, it was usually deceased. And I'm not talking about, okay, I'm not talking about from a deceased child from the union of a husband and wife. I'm talking about when the phenomenon takes the woman. And the child itself would never stay. It would go missing. The phenomenon knew which baby belonged to it. And if it was born, if it was not taken out of the womb before birth, they would take it after birth. And so these babies were considered, this is an important highlight to it as well. They were considered to be replicas of life, literally biological avatars. Why? Again, it's a self-replication of species. I'm not just impregnating you with a baby. I'm impregnating you with me. Okay, this is why in Genesis 6, these women were pregnant with fallen angels. They were impregnated in the 16th century, impregnation of the dead in the bodies of the living. And I'll stop rambling.
You're not rambling. And plus, I always tell people like on this show we love a good rant. It's just I'm rant inducing, I guess, because I always get people ranting, and I'm like, I'm with it. So I had a good question, but it left me. Oh my gosh, and I wrote it down somewhere, but now I can't read my writing. So these, where do they go after? So when the fallen angels did the thing and made the Nephilim, it's themselves. Do these beings want a physical body? Do they not
Yes.
have the type of physical body? If they already have a physical body and they're doing this and just creating this illusion, what are they doing with themselves after they
Well,
take
okay, so
themselves out of the female? Or, if that makes any sense.
absolutely. So let's get into the Apocrypha of John. It's a commentary of Genesis 6. And
That was on my
it,
net. That was one of my next questions.
yeah.
I was
So
going
this
to
is
ask you to talk about it.
fascinating.
Perfect.
We see this. Let me say this again. The interconnectivities are glaringly obvious at this point. In one of Dr. Paula Turner's case study with Ted Rice was abducted with his grandmother. And one of the beings tried to mate with her. She's like, "Look, I'm not doing this. I've only made love to one man. It's my husband. He's been dead now for years." Bam! Here comes her husband. Right, playing the role, right, looking for some form of compliance. So, with that said, in Genesis 6 narrative and the Apocrypha of John commentary, it says that these beings waited until the husbands were gone. They were dead, they were at work, whatever. And then it said that they manifested to the women in the images of their husbands. Damn, how unfortunate, right? It's the same phenomenon. And so during this protocol of belief, is what I call it, uh, they inseminate her, and then the Apocrypha of John says that they took on the image of the man, the husband, and then they stare into her eyes. Another motif in abduction. And I actually brought that up in the beginning of the show. And as they're staring into the eyes, they inseminate and they conceive the fetus within the womb. Now, in that particular time in history, they had what is called an obstetric tradition. We see it employed all the time in Mesopotamian literature. The belief was that whatever man the woman was focused upon during the act of insemination, whatever that man looked like, she would birth the material image through her womb. Wait a minute, right? What are we dealing with here? But here's the key point as well. When they inseminated the woman, they changed their appearance to whatever they really look like. In other words, I want a body, a biological avatar that looks like my apparition.
Which could be kind of terrifying, right? Because some of these things
Absolutely.
they turn into are not human looking.
Right. So it's a fascinating hypothesis, one that I'm entertaining, but it shows an incredible parallels with what we're discussing. It's the apparition within the body. When the body dies, it inhabits another one. And this is why, again, people always, okay, the non-threat narrative. Well, if they were such a threat to us, they would kill us. That's not necessarily true. If they were parasitic in nature, they would need us to survive.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because you learn that in biology, like the viruses that kill off people don't end up
Right.
surviving because they need you as their mode of replication. So
Absolutely. The
it's no
replication.
different with these guys.
Yes, ma'am. And so let me say this before I'll stop and perhaps we have questions. And look, guys, I understand not everybody's going to agree with me, but I'm saying that at the very least there are some things we need to pay close attention to. But within the demonological literature, we realized that possession and pregnancy were the same to these beings. And that possession was not just the relocation of consciousness, it was the replication of life.
Sorry, I was looking. I'm
It's
looking
all
at some of
good.
these comments. You guys are naughty tonight. Okay, so mind blown to the point where like I got dizzy for a second.
Mhm.
Because I've been through some of this. So what the fuck?
Right. You know,
But let's get to some. Go ahead.
no, I was going to
Oh,
say
sorry. I thought I
even with
interrupted you.
even with the succubus encounters, we have men in the 16th century and the 11th centuries. Uh, they were given babies, and their question was, "How can I be a father if I'm a virgin?" Ding, ding, dong, dong. Right? It's the same phenomenon. But anyways, I digress. Good.
So that brings like that could be such like a hot button to some people because that's what happened with Jesus, right? Like and
Yes.
the Immaculate Conception, right? So is that off limits to talk about
100%.
or is
No,
that,
I.
or maybe it was just like a nice one that made a
Well,
nice guy,
yeah.
like this angel
Okay.
that came, right? Gabriel, like
Mhm.
are there light and shadow aspects of these beings too? Like, sure, a lot of this is horrible, like they're lying to you.
Mhm.
to impregnate you and do hybridization.
Mhm,
But we have like people that have had like Mary, for instance, with the Archangel Gabriel and the Immaculate Conception.
mhm.
How does something like that play into it? Because the whole like what, like over half the world believes that. So
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, the age-old question in demonology, even originating in Genesis 6, was do these beings have their own seed? Where are they getting it from?
right.
It's the old Betty and Barney Hill abduction account. What were they doing? They took seed from them, right? So that answers question
Yeah.
for us already. They were taking seed from men, and now, and then let's get down to this too. This is why it grieves me when, okay, I'm so excited, and I had a missing fetus and everything, and it's the greatest thing in the world. We have to understand something. This is a key point. The earliest texts we have of this phenomenon were these beings hovering over recently deceased men and stealing their seed and then implanting it into women. This is why in the Apocrypha of John it said that they took seed, they took, what was it said? They mixed, that's what it was. They mixed from the darkness, they took and they mixed the seed in the womb. So this is not, I mean, even to the point in witchcraft where the seed that was being harvested by these beings were taken from men that were murdered. So whatever we're dealing with, and get, it's not good. It's not okay. It's not something, oh my God, no big deal. We are mortal portals for them. But getting back to this idea that, okay, what happened with Yeshua and Jesus? Years ago, I got in contact with one of my heroes, and he had been to the Vatican, looked at the archives, talked to one of their authorities, and said, "All right, what do you guys really believe is going on?" And they said, "Well, according to our understanding, that there is a war occurring. There's a war between gods and ghosts and all of the above, and we're in the middle of it." But getting back to Yeshua, I got into an argument with my family over this because there's a movement within evangelicalism that suggests that, okay, in order for Yeshua to be who he was and come from the lineage of Joseph or David, that God had to take the seed from Joseph and then implant it into the womb of Mary. It,
That is
it's
not gonna make people happy if you say
no,
that. And I don't
it's
care,
okay.
obviously, but, like, it's so synonymous with these even alien or extraterrestrial hybridization situations. A beautiful light
100%.
being presents itself to you,
Right,
and it's giving
right.
you healing and all this beautiful stuff, and then, like, something else happens. So that's even worse than, like, like, a demon appearing, right?
Mhm.
At
Yeah,
least, like, a legit demon's like, "Yeah, I'm a demon." Like, you know it's
yeah,
gonna be mean, but, like, in most
right.
cases. But, like, with the angel situation that's been happening, like, what are you supposed to do when this thing that you're taught is, love and light, and it's here to protect
Mhm.
you, but then it crosses the line sometimes with people.
Well, of course, of course. Uh, we have to understand the fallen angel hypothesis anyway. What is fallen about an angel, and what's angelic about the fallen? Again, if you get into the literature, what our ancestors were trying to describe was this phenomenon, this entity. Whatever we're experiencing, oh, it's a fallen angel. Why? Because we cannot understand what it is. We have to create something. We have to label it because in other words, I have to call it a fallen angel because if it's a fallen angel, it falls underneath the linguistic umbrella, therefore the authority of the church. I could just say a few things and bam, 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 you're done. And these beings are not doing that. Um, I was reading in Beyond UFOs where one individual who she had been abducted since her youth, and they had been monitoring her fertility and right trying to self-replicate. And but anyway, she recently became a Christian, and so she felt their presence in the room. And this particular case study, it broke my heart. Like I stopped researching and I went to Rhode Island for a week because I had to get away from this stuff, but she's pulls out the Bible and starts reading scripture and starts quoting the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Her eyes roll back in her head, she's gone. So the ontological shock that many are in for, it's not going to be comfortable. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't research this, because again, if we can figure out what they have a fear of, then we can understand what they have a faith in, and that's when we really start recovering who we are as a species and all that.
Yeah, that's.
Am I getting killed in the comments? I have a sneaky suspicion.
No. It's a lot of debate amongst one another. So, and then people are not being like, rude to each other. So thank you for debating without being dicks to each other. Put simply, let's go to some of these starred comments. Yeah, the whole like Lord's Prayer thing. Like, guys, I've been having these sorts of experiences since I was like a little girl, like even before the UFO experience. So like I would be trying to say the Lord's Prayer because that's supposed to be it for you, right? Like that's supposed to be the safe word. The Jesus, the Lord's Prayer is supposed to be this whole thing that the demons hate. They will take your thoughts and your words out of you. Like literally take it out of you. And I'm telling you this from experience. And now I sound like that crazy old lady on the corner. Like, listen to me. But it will take your voice. It will take your breath. So like maybe there is some validity to like the way that it's said that might affect them. Or maybe just like the power that you put into it yourself when you're saying it. Sometimes they won't let you say it. Like it won't come out. It's super weird. So I just wanted to say that because people I'm seeing like put on the armor of God. There's only one name that makes these entities scatter. That's not true for all of them. And I'm not trying to, I would never, crap on somebody's faith or say like you're wrong. But I'm just saying like in all case, this is not always the case. So that just says like they are not the same demons that we've been taught they are.
It's something, it's something far darker. If I
mean,
may,
maybe some demons listen to that, right? Because we have like the instance of the Temple of Solomon, right?
Yeah, and I get all of that. I respect it. Let me say this, because I've heard that stuff all my life. You know what I mean? Say this, do that, pray this, pray that, and again, this is uncomfortable for me to say because my dad's a pastor. I grew up in church.
Oh, sure.
They grew me to be a minister, so it's like, I feel like I'm being disloyal, but I have to be loyal to the data and not to the dogma. And moving further, whatever we're dealing with, again, like Malachi Martin, or one of the exorcists from the Vatican, the late exorcist, he said that he was performing an exorcism, and then like after the exorcism was done, he goes to bed, and he wakes up in the middle of the night to, I think, 4 shadow people lined up in a row. And when he looks at them, they were chanting the Lord's Prayer backwards. Now, when I read that, I thought, okay, I thought that was extremely creepy, obviously. Like, what the
yeah, definitely. Straight up, it could only be creepier if it was a bunch of kid demons doing it.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Oh my God. So I didn't know what that meant, Priscilla. Like what relevance would saying it backwards have? It made no sense until I got into Kabbalistic literature.
Okay.
And Isaac Luria would pray against these things. And he would take the Lord's Prayer and he would say it the right way. Then he would reverse it and say it backwards. So what were they saying to Malachi Martin? Oh yeah, you're going to exercise us? We know more about this than you do. We'll take your prayer and reverse it on you. And watch this. We're going to say it. That's how little it affected them. I got chills because we've got to start taking the blinders off of our eyes and realizing that much of this is propaganda by the phenomenon itself to let us believe and allow us to believe that there are rules they follow when in fact they're playing a different game entirely. All right.
I agree.
My rant's
don't
over.
be sorry. No, don't be sorry because I agree. Like the reason I'm researching a lot of dream stuff is because yes, there are like the whole dream realm has been good things, not just these entities like this, right, guys? Like there's beautiful experiences. There's experiences you can have. You can have lucid dreaming, have fun. You can be creative. Like I had a lucid dream where I was in a building that I had written about in a book I'm writing, not the dream book I'm writing too, but like I was like, holy crap, I get to explore this, and so there's amazing things. And I'm a witch, so there are like dream magic scenarios that you can use for self-discovery and for communing with yourself and just being free, astral projection. And usually you probably say don't do it, but he's like, don't be doing that. So there are other like aspects to dream time and dream worlds that are fun, but this is not one of the fun ones that we're talking about tonight. So the reason I'm getting into it is I'm sick of people telling experiencers that I believe you believe. I freaking hate that. I'm sorry. It pisses me off because you're telling me these people, like, people are waking up sick as hell, like, and they're waking up with like you said, ligation marks, freaking pregnant. What? Right? And like they believe that they're dreaming. And even a lot of people have written about this, the abduction phenomena. Like some people will say that they're dreaming as a coping mechanism too.
100%.
So they don't want to believe that's real, that just happened to them. So it's just important to see all sides. And at this point, like, I'm going to keep diving into it. And I've had people tell me, I'm sure they've told you, like, especially coming from, your family background, like, stop looking into this because you're going to open something up. I'm like, well, it's already open. But you can't like, if it's already open, it's open, and then there's people that will, be afraid of you speaking this truth because they're afraid that whatever you're seeing and whatever you're researching is going to like piggyback onto them or hitchhiker, like the hitchhiker effect or something like that. So it's not something that people want to really research, but it's like you told me in the past, we were talking privately, like it's a calling. You're compelled to do this. So you're compelled to look down these rabbit holes that most people are afraid of. Somebody has to stop being afraid to get to the bottom of this.
Correct. The idea is if I ignore it, it doesn't exist.
All right. So here's one of the starred comments.
Let's go, Caleb. Yes. What's up? I'm sorry, I got real pumped.
Okay. Caleb.
Yahweh rebuke
I made it. Why Satan wanted sorry, I know that's probably not your voice. I was just reading. I'm just reading it, guys. It's like, why Satan wanted Moses' body. He wanted to reanimate it. But Michael, the archangel, simply said, Yahweh rebuke you.
Yahweh rebuke you. And he didn't rebuke him. Yahweh did. Yahweh. It's very interesting, right? Again, like I grew up hearing all kinds of stuff. Lord, rebuke the devil and all that stuff. He'll flee. And I agree. I think I was really excited when Caleb said it made sense to him. I think that's what it's all about. That's why I do the research. I'm not saying I'm 100% right. I'm definitely not saying that. I'm sure there are things that I've got wrong. But my reason in being here is to highlight the many nuances of the phenomenon, the many interconnectivities. We can't ignore the experiencers. We can't. I'll tell you what. I've gotten very vocal even on social media. I watched one woman comment on a very famous ufologist rather, and give her account. And he said, well, you need to go talk to this channeler and talk to Seth. And I'm thinking, what the hell is Seth going to tell her? It's not real. It didn't happen to you. And what we've been doing is gaslighting experiencers.
Yes.
And she called him out on that. It pissed me off because I'm like, dude, you can't tell these people that. I've had marriages. I've had a counsel where it fell apart because the husband did not believe the wife. They're not doing this to you. Yeah, they are. I've had cases. One experiencer where the husband left the wife, didn't believe it at all until finally it started affecting him. He challenged it in the middle of the night. Something, according to his testimony, balled a fist up, punched him right in the face, and gave him partial facial paralysis. So we cannot gaslight experiencers anymore.
So I'm going to use that to scare my husband. Fight with me. I'm going to have my sleep demon get you.
Yeah, right.
Do what I say. I think we addressed this one. We talked about, I hope we addressed this one when we talked about how the dream, we're not talking about traditional, like, dream, like it's more of like a waking type of dream situation.
Right. The attachment is employing the dream state. Right. That's the difference.
Okay. So And I notice a lot of people have these experiences like in hypnagogia, you know, like when they're
Mhm,
either falling or waking, like that middle area.
mhm,
Um, is that because people are just easier to manipulate in that dream state? Because I've woken up just
mhm,
with like starting to wake up, waking myself up from a crazy dream, right? An
mhm.
actual dream. But it's like something else is there as you're waking up and
Yeah,
it's trying to pull you back. You're awake, but it's pulling you back, if that makes any sense.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
is it because people are more impressionable or easier to manipulate as they're waking or as they're falling asleep?
Yes, and again, they don't know what's real and what isn't. I'm your husband, of course you are. And oh, it's just a dream. I'll wake up later, or all of the above. And then afterwards, again, they realize, okay, I've got bruisings, I've got ligature marks, I have scarifications, skin anomalies that directly correlate with what I thought was just a dream.
Yep,
And that is, I mean, that's some crazy stuff.
definitely is. And it's again, guys, it's happened to me. Like I've had dreams where people are holding my legs down
Hmm.
and I'll wake up and be like, okay, I don't know. Like you won't even remember like all the details, but then you wake up
Right.
like I had pain, like somebody was holding my legs down, and you wake up with like finger bruises, like where you were
Yes.
having that. And I tell people this, and that goes back to the I believe you believe. Like, okay, well, better get the crazy pills then, I guess. I don't know.
It's
I have
lazy,
such a
intellectually
powerful
lazy to say
mind. I
that.
can manifest legation, you know, or ligature
Yeah,
marks
it's
on
stupid.
myself.
And I really have
So
no patience with for people like that because it's and this is coming from honestly, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but there are only two possibilities with individuals that have that mindset. Either you don't know what you're talking about, you're completely ignorant of the literature, or you're lying about it. You just think we're all stupid. And the data, these case studies speak for themselves. You know what I mean? Um, sorry. Visions like those angelic or spirit beings or entities masking as religious figures. The latter, absolutely the latter.
I'm gonna reread that in case people listen to
Mhm.
audio only.
Okay.
What he's gonna reply to right now is visions like Guadalupe are those angelic or spirit beings or entities masking as religious figures. And you said it was the latter.
In my perspective, this is something that quite a few researchers in the United Kingdom are also talking about is we have to test these spirits. We have to test them. Dr. Carla Turner wrote a book for this specific reason called The Masquerade of Angels. I mean, again, they've appeared as Jesus, they've appeared as Muhammad, they've appeared as Mickey Mouse, they've appeared as deceased relatives, as husbands, boyfriends, girlfriends. But there has to be a way where we can test them. Okay, even okay, like in the case studies where Yeshua or Jesus has manifested to these people or these individuals, and then tries to teach them that Ra is God. What we have is a historical record of what Yeshua taught in the first century. He never taught that Ra is God. So what is that entity doing? Right? It's playing the role, hoping that you don't know anything about Hebrew literature. You'll just go along with it. That's another way to test the spirit. I'll never forget. There was a famous medium who thought that he was that his grandmother's mother, his deceased mother, was one of his guides, and for 26 years he's getting readings from her and words and prophecies, and then until this being tells him to do something that his mother would have never told him to do. Only then did he realize, oh my God, this has never been my mom. The entire time this entity was playing the long game.
Yeah. So are there good ones? Like, is there angels? Like, our thought
Mhm.
of like just how we have this vision of demon being like this mean, horrible, evil thing,
Yeah,
and we picture angels, right? Like Gabriel, Michael, those guys. Like, what is that?
I
Where do
believe
they come into this? You know what I mean? Because is there a sort of
absolutely.
duality that comes into play, or is it just like don't trust anything, even if it's
Well, okay. First of all, I don't really pay attention to the miracle. I pay attention to the message. And in
Mhm.
many cases, especially with some experiencers, I experienced the miraculous. Therefore, the entity must be who it says it is. Right. And so the weight of proof is like, okay, they performed some miracle in front of me that therefore it has to be this entity. I don't look at the manifestation. I look at the message behind it. What is it doing? What is it saying to you? Because in many cases, it's not what they want us to remember. It's what they want us to forget that really matters. Um, yeah. So getting back to that, I try to test them. What was the question again? Because I want to make sure I answer it.
Okay, the question was mine. So it was just,
Mhm.
are there good guys? Like,
Yes.
are there good angels, or are there good visitations? Does anybody have our back in the spiritual universe, or in this
Yeah.
realm?
There's something out there. I was rereading Dr. Coulter Turner's book Taken, and in the very last chapter, she talks about this is powerful. This is powerful stuff right here. She said she went into a dream at nighttime, and this dream was really, really weird. And she said, in many times when she was abducted, they would take her from that dream state, and then the abduction encounter would take place. And so she said that it was similar to that. But prior to the dream state she was in, she had asked the ether, the universe, or God. She asked if there is actually a good species out there. Are there any good beings that are on our side? Or are we existentially alone in this battle? And this is how powerful. Oh my God, it gives me chills. She said that she was in a dream state when something plucked her out of the dream entirely and put her in front of a panel of beings. And she said it wasn't a dream anymore. Like she wasn't at her house. It was like they physically plucked her out of the dream, put her in a chair. She said, I remember feeling the texture of the chair itself. And she was in front of a panel of creatures, a being. She said, I could not see their faces, but I knew that they were there. And she said they asked her, they said, no, they didn't ask her, but they told her, you asked us a question, we're going to answer it for you. And so they said it was as if they had a massive theater projection, or a screen, if you will, like an IMAX, and they pressed play. And it was essentially Jacob going to his father, stealing the birthright, over, and they would pause it. Now, Dr. Turner, what do you believe? What were you getting out of this scenario? And then she would say, okay, he's deceiving his father. No, 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 no. And they would rewind it, play over and over again until finally she understood what they were saying. They were telling her that there is a species that wants our bodies, that wants this planet. And just like Jacob and Esau, right? If anybody who knows this whole scenario, put on the skin, the fur, and everything, is that's what Esau wore. Essentially, that in order for them to take our planet, they have to become like us. Which again, we're back right into the consciousness in a hybridization program. So there, my point is, to answer the question, yes, there is a superior species out there that she referred to, that have the ability not just to induce people into dreams. Screw that. Pluck you out of the dream they're inducing you into. That's awesome.
I feel like, so you still don't really know if they're helping or not.
I mean, we don't have cases where that I know of where the abduction encounter occurs, and next thing you know, another angel comes in and beats the crap out of the alien.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were talking about visions. I think that a lot of these words could be kind of, depending on how you were taught too. So let's try to be respectful of each other. Anyways, let's see. I think that's everything that I had starred. So is there anything that you didn't get to talk about tonight that you wanted to touch on?
Yes. So this is really quickly. And again, guys, I'm not saying I'm right about everything. Nobody is. I'm just saying that there are things we need to reconsider. But there's very little modern phenomenon in ufology that we don't have in antiquity. Even the implant, like again, what I'm discussing tonight, the afterlife, souls being reincarnated or transmigration, whatever. I consider all of that underneath the linguistic umbrella of what I have called necronetics. It's the genetic relationship to necromancy. And so early on in necromantic rituals and in antiquity, these beings had formed some kind of biological technology where people would pull up corpses and they would carve the names of these unclean spirits into pieces of metal and then implant them into the body. In the consciousness of that being, remember what I told you, it's a self-replication program, self-replication of species. The consciousness of that entity would move through the letters in that metal and it would step into that body. And now, again, we have been told 1,000 times by these beings in UFO abduction. The reason we put implants in you is because it gives us access to your body.
Right.
It's not new. It's ancient, but and that's what I would say.
Crazy.
But yeah, I've had a blast. Again, I know I ramble, and I apologize if I rambled.
No, you're fine. Stop apologizing.
Thank you guys for tuning in, and everybody in the chat. Look, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I understand that, but hopefully, I added value to your pilgrimage into this mystery.
Yeah, I think people. I mean, I feel like the debate was pretty respectful within the chat too. So I don't think anything.
Sure.
We didn't have any crazy Nazis rolling in or any of those guys, So,
Yeah.
and there are people that I appreciate that come in here that talk to each other and debate with each other too. So I will always welcome that, as long as you're not being like horrible to each other. Then I appreciate it. So that ending note with the implant thing, that's what blew my mind when I was talking to you. I think one of the last 2 times. Because also, what does that say about like the entity's name? Like what sort of what does it carry within it? So this is what I asked you. Like if you get a name of an entity, don't say it. Because maybe it's like not, I'm not going to be like put my name on something. It's not going to do anything to you, but it's something with certain names that belong to certain entities that carries more, I don't know, energy to it or programming. Like how would you describe it?
Well, the Hebrew definition for name is nature. See, again, when they're carving their names into these implants, it's not just their names, but it's the consciousness, it's their nature. In the book Beyond UFOs, there was a young man that had an implant in him, and before his abduction occurred, it turned on. And when it turned on, this is important, when it turned on, instantly, he's seeing through their eyes. He said, all of a sudden, I'm seeing through their eyes as they're coming towards my house to kidnap me. My question that I'll leave everybody with is, if he was looking through their eyes, who was looking through his?
Wow. There you go, guys. Something to think about tonight as you're going to sleep. Sweet dreams, everybody.
Call it a night. You'll be good.
Yeah. Fraser is the only name that carries more weight than Jesus. I'm just kidding, guys. That was horrible.
Oh.
Sorry, I was joking.
They're gonna crucify you.
Anyways, it's all right. Thank you for joining, everybody in the chat. Goth Bosch, I love when you come by. You make it so interesting, and I really mean that. I'm always excited to see you because I'm like, oh, it's going to get good in here. Jen, thanks for coming in. I was enjoying the debate and the chat and everybody's talk. You guys were, I said you were being naughty, but I was joking. You guys were just being spicy, and I could appreciate a little spice and sass. So I love you all. If you're listening to this now or later or wherever, I appreciate you. Share, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Go follow Nathaniel on social media because that's where you are, right?
I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on Facebook anymore. I'm on Instagram, and I have my own YouTube channel as well.
Okay, go find him on Instagram, and then you can find everything there. I think I have your Instagram stuff in the description. If not, I'll add it. I'm pretty sure I do, but we'll see. Thank you so much, guys. Nathaniel, hang out after. I'm going to end the stream now. Have a good night and sweet dreams, everybody.